All right, let's do some definitions. Today we're going to define effective altruists and tech accelerationists, which are not the same thing, but are both terms that I feel like I've heard a whole lot in the last year and a half or so, and maybe never heard at all before that. Even though I think they both have application beyond generative AI, of course. So what do we mean when we say tech accelerationist?
So my understanding of tech accelerationist, and like you said, some of these words I sort of heard in the ether before, but I think they describe the division of different segments of Silicon Valley and technologists and how they are thinking about the deployment of technology. And one camp are tech accelerationists who believe in progress around technology at all costs, that should be the paramount priority of society, that it it being the advancement of technology is in itself an inherent good and a way to unlock unprecedented human potential. So this isn't limited to AI. It's also focused on biotechnology and robotics, and the idea that being that this can solve a whole lot of global problems. Mark Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz frequently writes from the voice of somebody who is a tech accelerationist, and I know that there have been conversations for people who are not tech accelerationists that we are being speciesist if we're not tech accelerationists, which seems like we probably should be, thinking about humanity. But for this group, really, there's no limit to how fast we should be developing this tech, that the faster, the better. And then we will solve all of the world's problems. Um, and the opposite of a tech accelerationist is a doomer, is somebody who thinks that we should stop developing technology, or at least significantly slow it down because of the dangers that it could create. But there is another group, Bridget, called effective altruists. So could you describe what effective altruism is?
Yeah, so I think effective altruists are motivated by a commitment to figuring out how to do the most good using everything they've learned and reason to figure out the best ways to improve the world. I think that's sort of the like from 10,000 feet way they would define themselves. And so they're less concerned with speed and more concerned with making sure that the resources are deployed to to produce the most positive impact over other potential priorities like just getting there fast. And they care about global health and reducing poverty and they believe that, by focusing on those ultimate, goods that it's not just technology. I think there are effective altruists, that existed before there was generative AI. They can guide, the technology to the very best outcomes. One thing I've tried to think about is if you're an effective altruist, can you also be a tech accelerationist? I mean, or are you somewhere between a tech accelerationist and a doomer? Like, what do you feel like they're all like plotted along a line, these terms, or they don't necessarily overlap at all? Like they're just different categories.
I I mean, I think it's a spectrum, and it's not very clearly defined. It's almost like artificial general intelligence, right? There's no clear definition for what makes you a tech accelerationist or an effective altruist or a doomer. We talked about Dario Amodei in an earlier episode, who is the creator of Anthropic, which makes Claude, which we've talked about many times. And he wrote an essay about the positive potential for AI, in part because he's developed a reputation as being a doomer. And so I think in a single person, you see somebody who is cast as a doomer, also trying to be an effective altruist, but also competing with OpenAI and others to develop tech as quickly as possible. So I would imagine in the single mind of somebody in Silicon Valley in leadership of these organizations, you might be switching back and forth depending on the market dynamics and how much pressure is on you among these different characteristics. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think probably very few of the leaders in these labs fall into just one of those categories at any one time. I do think there are people who are working full time on trying to slow down the technology. So I'm not sure that makes them like doomers and nothing else, but that, that's their focus. But my guess is most of the technologists leading these labs have a foot in effective altruism, have a foot in accelerationism, and also probably now and again want to slow down and take a beat. So I bet there's a little bit of everything for people who are doing this full time.
Yeah, and I brought up Mark Andreessen before because he strikes me as somebody who falls very firmly into that accelerationist territory. And to some degree, Sam Altman, although, like you said, he can go back and forth, or he at least acknowledges the dangers of AI, but sort of brushes past them or suggests really easy solutions like universal basic income will solve job displacement type things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I don't feel like I have enough of a sense of like Satya Nadella or Sundar Pichai, right, the Microsoft CEO or the Google CEO, about where they fall on it, but the actions of those companies feel accelerationist. But I would have to uh, know a lot more to figure out like where they'd put themselves on this spectrum.
yeah, and it seems like they're in such a tight spot too because they have to be responsive to their shareholders and um, be trying to win this race. But I would imagine that lying awake at night, knowing all of the sort of harmful effects of the advancement of this without thought, would also create conflict. Thank you for tuning in to 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Stay informed and inspired as we continue to explore the AI-driven future of the legal profession. We'll see you next time.